Imagine the vast Mongolian steppes of the 12th century, where endless golden grasslands stretched beneath enormous blue skies, and the wind whispered secrets across a land that would soon birth the greatest conqueror humanity has ever known. Tonight, we journey back to witness the extraordinary rise of a boy born clutching a blood clot in his tiny fist, a child abandoned to die on those windswept plains who would grow to become Genghis Khan, founder of the largest contiguous land empire in human history. And perhaps most remarkably of all, this one man's relentless empire building left such a profound and lasting mark on the human family tree that roughly 16 million men alive today, scattered across continents and cultures, carry his genetic legacy woven into the very fabric of their DNA. Before we journey across the windswept grasslands and ancient trade routes of the Mongol Empire together, if you're enjoying settling in for the night with a bit of forgotten history, consider hitting subscribe. And I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from right now? And what time is it there? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Let us begin where all great stories must begin, at the very beginning. The year was 1162, and the place was the rugged wilderness near the Onon River in what is now northeastern Mongolia. The grasslands were just awakening from their winter slumber, pale green shoots pushing through the frost-hardened earth, and the sky overhead hung low and grey like a woolen blanket pulled tight against the cold. In a felt-covered tent called a ger, a young woman named Holun was giving birth to her first son. Her husband, Yesugei, was a chieftain of the Borjigin clan, a man of moderate power in a world where strength was the only currency that truly mattered. When the baby finally emerged, the midwife gasped in wonder. The infant's tiny right hand was clenched into a fist, and when they gently pried open those miniature fingers, they discovered something extraordinary. The baby was clutching a blood clot the size of a knuckle bone, dark and gleaming in the firelight. In the traditions of the steppe peoples, this was a powerful omen, a message from the eternal blue sky that this child was destined for greatness, perhaps for violence, certainly for a life that would shake the foundations of the world. The secret history of the Mongols, the oldest surviving Mongolian literary work, records this miraculous detail with reverence. They named the baby Temujin after a Tatar warrior his father had recently captured, following the custom of absorbing the strength of conquered foes. From his very first breath, this child was marked by the rhythms of conquest that defined life on the Mongolian steppe. Close your eyes and imagine the landscape that cradled young Temujin. Vast rolling grasslands seemed to go on forever, rippling like a golden ocean beneath the wind. The sky overhead was enormous, a dome of the deepest blue stretching from horizon to horizon. The Mongols called it Tengri, the eternal blue sky, and they believed it watched over all things. The smell of the steppes was the smell of grass and earth and horse. Horses were everything to the Mongol people. They drank mare's milk fermented into a tangy beverage called erag. They ate horse meat when other food was scarce. And they spent so much time in the saddle that foreign observers would later say the Mongols seemed to be born on horseback, abandoned to the wolves. The first years of Temujin's life held a simple happiness. His father was a respected chieftain, and young Temujin learned the essential skills of steppe life. He learned to ride before he could properly walk, and to shoot a bow while his father corrected his grip. The felt walls of the family ger swayed gently in the steppe winds, and inside the fire kept everyone warm through bitter winters. But happiness on the steppe was always fragile. When Temujin was around 9 years old, his father decided to find him a bride following Mongol custom. They rode together to the camp of the Ongirat tribe, where Yesugei arranged a match with a girl named Berte. Temujin would stay with her family for a time, as was tradition. Yesugei departed for home but never arrived. Along the way he encountered a group of Tatars who invited him to share a meal. Bound by the sacred laws of steppe hospitality, he accepted. They poisoned him. The poison worked slowly, and by the time Yesugei reached home, he was dying. He lingered for 3 agonizing days, then was gone. In the brutal politics of the steppe, a dead chieftain's family was only as valuable as the protection they could offer. With Yesugei gone, his followers saw no reason to remain loyal to a widow and children. One by one they packed up and rode away. Holun pleaded with them, but oaths meant little when survival was at stake. Think of what this meant for young Temujin, recalled from his bride's family to find his world in ruins. The camps were empty, the fire pits cold, the grass reclaiming spots where hundreds of Gurs had stood. His father was dead, his protectors were gone, they were abandoned to die. What followed were years of desperate survival. Holun gathered wild onions from riverbanks, fished in cold streams, and hunted small animals. The children grew thin and strong, hardened by constant hunger. It was during these years that Temujin learned lessons that would shape his empire. He learned that loyalty was more valuable than gold. He learned that those who abandoned you deserved no mercy when strength arrived. And he learned to nurture a cold, patient fury. Blood brotherhood and rising power. As Temujin grew into a hardened young man, the steppe began to notice him. There was something in his eyes that made other men want to follow him or see him destroyed. His first true test came when raiders stole the family's few horses. Without hesitating, Temujin set off in pursuit, tracking them for days. Along the way, he met a young man named Bo-Orchu, who offered to help. Together they recovered the horses. Bo-Orchu became one of Temujin's first true followers, bound not by blood but by choice, recognizing that this young man was destined for remarkable things. Even more significant was Temujin's relationship with Jamuka. The two had known each other in childhood, and now, reunited as young men, they performed the ancient ritual of Anda, sworn brotherhood. They exchanged horses, the most precious gift one nomad could give another, and swore to share everything, to defend each other unto death. Imagine them sitting cross-legged in a jur, smoke drifting toward the circular opening above, their faces flickering in firelight. Outside, horses grazed peacefully and stars wheeled overhead. These were young men who had known abandonment, and in each other found something precious. But even as their friendship deepened, a grander ambition was growing within Temujin. The steppe in those days was chaos, warring tribes and shifting alliances. No one had ever united all these fractious peoples under a single banner. Temujin looked out across the golden grass and began to imagine something unprecedented. A single Mongol nation united not by blood, but by loyalty, not by tradition, but by merit. Around 1182, a group of followers proclaimed him Khan of a small coalition. It was a modest beginning, but the first step on a journey that would reshape the world, the forging of an empire. What set Temujin apart from every other ambitious chieftain was his revolutionary approach to building loyalty. In the traditional world of the steppe, everything revolved around blood ties. You were born into your clan, and the boundaries of your world were defined by birth. Temujin saw the fundamental weakness of this system. Blood ties could be broken by jealousy. Family members could betray each other. What mattered, he realized, was not birth but choice. Loyalty demonstrated, abilities possessed. So he built something new, a society based on meritocracy. When a common herder showed courage in battle, Temujin promoted him over nobles born to privilege. When an enemy warrior surrendered with grace, Temujin welcomed him into his inner circle. What mattered was competence and loyalty. One striking example was Subutai, from an unremarkable family of blacksmiths. In the traditional order, he would have spent his life mending tools. But Temujin recognized his military genius, and Subutai rose to become perhaps the greatest general of the medieval world, conquering more territory than Alexander the Great. This approach created an army unlike any before. Warriors fought because they believed in their leader and knew accomplishments would be rewarded. A poor shepherd's son could dream of becoming a general. Temujin also revolutionized military organization, dividing forces into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. He broke up tribal groupings and mixed warriors from different clans, building new loyalties. His cavalry advanced at impossible speeds, communicating across battlefields with flags and fire signals. And beneath all this was a simple principle enforced with iron consistency. Loyalty was rewarded lavishly. Betrayal was punished with absolute destruction. By 1206, Temujin had achieved what no one thought possible. He had united all the Mongol tribes. At a great gathering called a Kurultai beside the Onon River where he had been born, the assembled chieftains proclaimed him Genghis Khan, universal ruler. He was around 44 years old, and his greatest conquest still lay ahead. A world conquered. In the 20 years between his proclamation and his death in 1227, this former abandoned child built an empire stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea, conquering more territory than any single individual in human history. First came the Western Xia Kingdom, falling by 1209. Then the massive Jin dynasty of northern China, one of Asia's most powerful states. By 1215, his forces had captured their capital at Zhongdu, now known as Beijing. But it was the destruction of the Khwarezmian Empire that announced the terrifying power of the Mongol war machine. This state controlled much of Persia and Central Asia, and its Shah was accustomed to being treated as a great power. War began with a diplomatic insult. Genghis sent a trade caravan seeking commercial relations. The local governor massacred the delegation. When Genghis sent ambassadors demanding justice, the Shah executed one and sent the others back humiliated. It was a catastrophic mistake. Between 1,219 and 1,221, Mongol armies swept across the Khwarezmian Empire like a thunderstorm. Great cities that had stood for centuries fell one after another, populations killed or enslaved, libraries burned. The Shah fled, dying as a fugitive on a Caspian island. His empire, built over generations, was erased in less than 3 years. Yet Genghis was not simply a destroyer. Throughout his campaigns, he adopted religious tolerance remarkable for the time. Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and shamanic followers could worship freely. He exempted religious leaders from taxation. He established the Yasa, a code of laws applying equally to all subjects regardless of origin. This uniformity created stability that allowed trade to flourish. Under Mongol rule, a merchant could travel from China to Persia with reasonable safety, something previously impossible. This is the paradox of any Genghis Khan documentary. The same man who ordered millions of deaths created conditions for unprecedented cultural exchange. The Silk Road revived under Mongol protection. Chinese innovations reached Europe. Persian knowledge travelled to East Asia. The foundations were laid for the interconnected world we live in today. The science of a genetic legacy. Now we come to the most remarkable part of our story. In 2003, a genetic study revealed that Genghis Khan's impact on the human family tree was far more direct than anyone imagined. A team of geneticists led by Chris Tyler Smith analysed Y chromosome markers in blood samples from over 40 populations across Asia. The Y chromosome passes essentially unchanged from father to son, carrying a genetic signature that survives for centuries. What they found was extraordinary. Across a vast territory stretching from China to Afghanistan, roughly 8% of men shared a nearly identical Y chromosome signature. This was far too many people sharing far too similar a marker to be random. Something unusual had allowed one man's Y chromosome to spread with unprecedented success. The researchers traced this genetic lineage to Mongolia around 1,000 years ago. The geographic distribution matched the Mongol Empire at its greatest extent. When they calculated the number of men carrying this marker today, the figure was staggering. Approximately 16 million men, roughly 1 in 200 males on the planet, carry a Y chromosome descending from a single male ancestor in medieval Mongolia. While the study could not definitively prove this ancestor was Genghis Khan, the circumstantial evidence was overwhelming. No one else had the combination of reproductive access and intergenerational success to explain such a genetic footprint. How was this possible? Historical records suggest Genghis Khan had hundreds of wives and concubines from conquered peoples. He likely fathered dozens or even hundreds of children. But the key lies in what happened to his descendants. Under the Mongol system, the Khan's male descendants enjoyed enormous privileges, including preferential access to women. This advantage compounded over generations. Imagine Genghis fathered 50 sons who survived to adulthood. If each had 50 sons, that would mean 2,500 male-line grandchildren. Continue this through 30 generations, and you approach figures in the tens of millions. The Genghis Khan DNA legacy demonstrates that one person's actions can leave a mark on our species persisting for dozens of generations. Consider that you carry genetic material passed through hundreds of generations, through farmers and warriors and nomads, through plague and prosperity. Somewhere in your ancestry are people whose names are forgotten, but whose legacy lives in your cells right now. The death of the Khan and his enduring shadow. By summer 1227, Genghis Khan was in his 60s, old by steppe standards, though he still led armies personally. His empire stretched from sea to mountains, yet one corner defied his will. The Western Xia kingdom had failed to provide promised troops. This disloyalty could not go unpunished. Despite failing health, Genghis led one final campaign. The historical records disagree about what happened. Some accounts say he was thrown from his horse and suffered injuries that never healed. Others suggest he contracted a fever, possibly plague. What we know is that around the 18th of August, 1227, Genghis Khan died in his tent in the mountains of northwestern China. His final instructions were characteristically strategic. He ordered his death kept secret until the western Xia capital had fallen. He designated his third son, Ogedai, as successor, choosing capability over seniority. And he asked to be buried in a secret, unmarked location. The funeral procession killed everyone it encountered, ensuring the grave's location would remain unknown. To this day, no one has found the tomb of Genghis Khan. Somewhere beneath the Mongolian grasslands, the greatest conqueror in history lies in eternal rest. The empire did not die with him. Under his son and grandsons, conquests continued for another generation, pushing into Russia, Poland, Hungary, Korea, and the Islamic heartland. At its greatest extent, the Mongol Empire covered nearly 24 million square kilometers, roughly 16% of Earth's land area. No empire has ever controlled so much contiguous territory. Within generations, the unified state fragmented into separate khanates. The Golden Horde dominated Russia, the Chagatai Khanate controlled Central Asia, the Ilkhanate ruled Persia. The Yuan dynasty governed China, all traced legitimacy to the bloodline of that boy born clutching a blood clot, a legacy beyond measure. The Mongol Empire created what historians call the Pax Mongolica, a period of stability allowing trade and cultural exchange to flourish. The Silk Road reached its golden age. It was said a virgin bearing gold could walk unmolested across the empire. Chinese gunpowder, printing, and the compass travelled westward, transforming European warfare, learning, and navigation. Persian astronomical knowledge moved eastward. When Marco Polo travelled to Kublai Khan's court, he followed roads the Mongols made safe. When Columbus sailed in 1492, he sought Asian riches Europeans learned about through Mongol-era contacts. Of course, this legacy came at terrible cost. The death toll of Mongol conquests may have reached 40 million, roughly 10% of the world's population. Cities were erased. Irrigation systems destroyed forever. The trauma-shaped conquered cultures for centuries. How do we weigh destruction against connection? How do we judge a man who created conditions for unprecedented exchange while causing unprecedented suffering? These questions have no easy answers. What we can say is that Genghis Khan's impact was profound and lasting. Political boundaries still bear traces of Mongol conquests. Millions carry his genetic signature. Trade patterns defining our globalized world originated in his empire. For better and worse, we live in a world he helped create. Epilogue. Under the eternal blue sky. The Mongolian steppe is quieter now. Great armies no longer thunder across its grasslands, but the land remains much as it was 8 centuries ago. Vast golden grass bends before the wind. The enormous blue sky stretches from horizon to horizon. The same stars Genghis Khan saw wheel slowly through the darkness. Somewhere beneath that grass, in a location never found, Genghis Khan lies sleeping. The man who commanded the largest empire in history, whose genetic legacy touches 16 million descendants, rests in the same earth that cradled his birth. And in homes around the world, His Y chromosome continues its quiet journey through time, passing from father to son as it has for 800 years. An invisible thread connecting millions of living men to a single point in medieval Mongolia. The wind still blows across the steppe tonight, just as it did when Temujin was born. The horses still graze, the stars trace their ancient patterns. And somewhere, a child is being born who will inherit that Y chromosome, adding one more link to a chain stretching back 30 generations to a boy clutching a blood clot, dreaming of a destiny he could not yet imagine. This is the story of Genghis Khan, warrior and ruler, destroyer and builder, ancestor to millions. A story of blood and fire, but also of human connection spanning centuries, a reminder of how much impact a single life can have. As you settle deeper into comfort, carry with you a sense of wonder at the vastness of human history and your place within it. You are part of something far larger than yourself, a great chain of beings stretching back to the beginning and forward into an unseen future. The eternal blue sky watches over you, just as it watched over a boy born clutching a blood clot in a felt tent on the Mongolian steppe, a boy who would grow to change the world forever. Sleep now, and let the whisper of wind across the endless grass carry you into peaceful dreams.